Hey, hello, how are you? My name is Enrique Palafox and I'm here with Dacre Stoker. Dacre, how are you?
Enrique, once again, it's always good to see you. It's especially better when we talk Dracula, isn't it?
Definitely, it's amazing chats. Okay,
Yeah,
we
and,
are
and we're
almost
getting
done. We
close.
are almost at the finish, and the publishing the Dracula's plays are quite few because in real time there's so many things happening, but that doesn't mean they are not important.
No, exactly. It's like small little details that are coming into play. The book has this feel of, major things happening, minor things, but those minor things are important if you read them carefully. And that's one of the elements of this book that makes it so interesting. And I've met so many people that say, I've read this book once a year for the past 25 years or every other year, and I keep picking up little things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Enrique, that the beginning of what we're going to talk about today is one of those things that requires you to look it over, read it slowly, and really understand what Bram Stoker is getting at, because there's some obviously religious undertones here when we see our champion, Mina, who is suffering. But there's a lot at play. So why don't you do a little translation of, it appears small, but it's really a big message, and then we'll sink our teeth into this.
Wonderful. Bienvenidos, nuestra semana número 24. Estoy aquí con Dacre Stoker platicando ya sobre la recta final de la novela. Recuerden que no porque no pasen muchas cosas no sean importantes. Justo lo que está diciendo Dacre es esto, ¿no? Todo por muy pequeño que sea, todo tiene una importancia y es justo lo que vamos a platicar el día de hoy. Okay, Dacre, let's begin with.
Well, the very, very opening of this deals with one of these sciences, mesmerism, mind control, that is a big part of the concerns and mysteries surrounding this novel. There are mysteries which men can only guess at, which age by age they may solve only in part. And this is one of them. This is one of these sciences that people were thinking is really interesting. And what we actually see is Bram describing the characteristics of Mina as she is beginning to go through this transformation to a vampire. We didn't see this with Lucy. We only saw her up and down, with blood, without blood, but we didn't see the mental aspect. We didn't go through that. And it's really interesting because, as you and I have discussed, the role of Seward as the psychiatrist and trying to figure out the mental aspect of Renfield. But now we have these observations that Bram is saying that during the sunset, we have a different Mina. She acts differently. At sunrise, it's different. And they're trying to understand what the heck is going on. Her moods are different. What does that mean? At first, there is a negative condition, as if some tie was loosened, and then freedom afterwards. This is weird because normally a proper lady would never be loose.
Yeah.
She would not
be
this looseness.
Very
exactly.
Restricted. Yeah.
And we also know that it was very sad back in these days if a lady was beginning to offer freedom of thoughts. They thought she was insane and they'd put her into an asylum. When she had, PMS from her monthly period.
Yeah.
Oh, this is negative. We'll put him in the insane asylum because you're acting irrationally.
Yeah.
This is a real great statement. And I said this now at least 3 times. Bram Stoker was very interested in how people who were insane, or were at least they were thought to be insane, how they acted and behaved. So much so that he went into a prison where people were held and interviewed them and tried to understand their feelings. Not just Renfield now. This is how we're beginning to see Mina. Is she being possessed? Is she losing her mind? What kind of control does Dracula have over her? What do you think about this, about how we're beginning to see her transformation?
I think it's very interesting how Bram wrote Mina so many years ago. And I'm thinking that maybe it's one of the first feminist characters in literature as we understand feminism right now. I'm thinking in all these movements of women rising up. What happened if they read Mina right now, because she's the one who is making all the hard decisions. She's the one who is not only useful because she already typed all the things that happened, but now not only is as useful as a secretary, but now she leads the heroes. Now she takes the chances. Now she's a very interesting character. So I'm thinking in another female strong character, which is Ripley from Aliens. And Mina in some way, it's I can feel a connection in there.
You know, that's a good point, because right here we're beginning to see, like Ripley did, she's a victim, but she also has to take control of this group, even though she is, you know, suffering.
Yeah.
She puts that aside and leads these people to say, now we have to come to action. So yeah, why don't you translate that, and then we'll follow with more thoughts. That's a very good point. We should investigate that.
Okay. Estamos hablando de la importancia de Mina, de la importancia de la construcción de su personaje. Estaba platicando Dacre cómo en esa época las mujeres estaban muy ceñidas, ¿no? Por lo que tenían que ser, ¿no? Este pensamiento victoriano que las restringía, ¿no? Entonces, precisamente estamos platicando del personaje de Mina y cómo ella sale y rompe con todos estos esquemas. Y me pregunta Dacre, bueno, ¿cuál es mi opinión del caso de Mina? Y para mí es uno de los primeros personajes feministas de la literatura, porque literal es un personaje muy fuerte, que es no solamente la parte útil, ¿no? Que era lo utilitario de la mujer en muchos años, sino que es ahora la que ella tiene el control, tiene el dominio, es la que liderea y está a la par de Van Helsing. She's nowadays she is as useful as Van Helsing, so she is on top of things.
Yes. And she is sort of like a suffragette, in the voting days. Yeah. She is a victim, and in a strange way, I think we'll see there is some religious overtones that we can look at too, as well as somebody suffering. Maybe a merger sort of of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. Because that may be a bit heavy, but for instance, here we go. She says this: "We are all here together in freedom for perhaps the last time. I know that you will always be with me to the end."
It's the Last Supper.
It's the Last Supper, exactly. They're all gathered together, and she is telling them, "Look, you may have to kill me. I will die, so we're all saved."
Yeah,
that's what she's basically saying. And I need you guys to promise me that you won't let me become a vampire, that you will, with great strength, do the difficult job. And that is to put the stake, cut the head off. And she's saying, you're all brave men, but I need you to at any case, cause salvation.
Yeah.
There is poison in my blood and in my soul, which may destroy me, which must destroy me unless some relief comes to us. She's thinking of the greater good. Destroy me for the greater good. Obviously, that's serious religious overtones, and it's not just Catholicism. It's most religions have this idea. We're doing this for the greater good. Yeah. What do you think?
My question is, there are plenty of difference between Bram's religion, because as you told, he was a Protestant, but the imaginary of the Catholicism is very powerful. So I believe he uses some of these things, as he has been done all over the novel, to trying to put an accent of this on these characters. The way Mina behaves, it's very similar with the one that as Jesus telling their beloved ones that she needs to be put aside for the greater good. I mean, that is a powerful message that doesn't have to be related with anything in special, but all religion, as you well said, because in the end, each religion took most of them of the same to leave the personal things aside and put it into the greater good, no?
Yeah, and you know, we do know that Bram walked into Marcia's library in 1866, and one of the topics he was looking that day was religious conflict.
Yeah.
And he lived in religious conflict in Ireland between the Catholics and the Protestants. And you know, maybe this is a stretch, but who knows? I believe it's quite possible that what Bram is saying here in this novel, you know, it's a book of good versus evil, where at the end, good and faith is what brings people together of all religions. When he says faith, I think he's meaning Catholics, Protestants, Hindu, Muslim, everything comes together. If we're going to defeat the evil of the devil, we need everyone to unify and have faith. And that's what we're talking about here. And so we go through this section of the story, and it ends really with Mina saying, you got to kill me, but death is not all. Death is not the final. It's worse. If we don't bind together and have good faith, and you guys have to believe me, you've got to perform this ritual that Van Helsing has outlined for us. You've got to do it for me. It's going to be hard, but if you can't, you know, destroy this vampire and you've got to kill me, you got to do it for the common good.
Yeah, impressive. Let me translate this for Mexican audience. Aquí estamos profundizando en Mina y las partes que tiene que ver con la vida de Bram. Recordemos que toda la novela hemos visto reflejos de la vida de Bram una y otra vez, y el conflicto religioso no es ajeno a Bram, porque recordemos que, bueno, si bien él es protestante, él es irlandés y entonces vivía, ¿no?, en todo este conflicto, ¿no?, que había también con la religión católica, católicos, protestantes siempre en lucha en esas partes del mundo. Entonces, bueno, pues eso tiene que ver un reflejo en Mina, sin duda alguna, ¿no? Aquí vemos una como dice Dacre, una fusión muy interesante entre aspectos, ¿no?, que podrían ser muy propios de Jesús, ¿no?, en el catolicismo, ¿no?, dejándose él a un lado, ¿no?, y diciéndole, oigan, en la última cena, ¿no?, bueno, pues esto va a pasar, ¿no?, tienen que seguir adelante porque la muerte no es lo único. Entonces eso mismo hace Mina, se pone de lado y les dice, chicos, ustedes tienen que seguir y yo no soy importante, tiene que haber un bien mayor. Recordemos que esta es una novela, ¿no?, de lucha entre el bien y el mal, y donde al final, bueno, pues el bien prevalece. Okay.
So once we sort of get over this portion of this week's readings, we now morph into picking up where the band of heroes left off as this sort of Sherlock Holmes style investigation, looking for the 50 boxes and the addresses of the Count. They were unsuccessful to actually stop the Count and destroy him in London, and he made his escape. And now these guys are coming back together. They have the addition of help of Mina as she is transforming into a vampire. They obviously get to Paris and take the Orient Express, so they must have taken a ferry ship. But what's interesting is they now have almost the power of mesmerism at their disposal if they can harness it. They don't have the telegraphs and telegrams and modern technology that they had earlier in the story, but they have this folkloric superstition, this old science of Mina, who Van Helsing has to hypnotize between sunset and sunrise. They can look inside her mind and find out, and asking her, what do you hear? What do you see? Because obviously there's a connection between the blood exchange, and she's hearing while they're on the train the water lapping upside the boat. So they know that Dracula's still on
the
the
ship.
Tsar Katrina as the boat is going.
Yeah.
But what they don't know, Enrique, is the ship going all the way around to Varna? We learn later that maybe not, and they're gambling because they've decided to take the very fast route, which is the train, to get all the way through Europe, to get to almost the Black Sea at Varna, where they expected to get there ahead of Dracula.
Yeah.
And they have a difficult time doing that. But what is interesting to me is they utilize all their abilities, which really is money, with Lord Godalming financing this, and their wit and their perseverance to use telegrams to contact the Lloyds of London, who tells them about the ships.
Yeah.
And they also use money to bribe the harbor master and these different
to make
guys.
Things happen.
That's exactly it. You and I joke because we've been to Romania together, and sometimes to get into places to see things, you got to make things happen.
Yeah.
So, it's a nice switch, because it begins to be fast action, lots of thinking of how they're going to capture the count. What's the ways they're going to get them.
But in the end, what we have in this moment is both powers, let me put this in some way, because we have in some way the spiritual battle going on with Mina, but in the other hand, we have the physical battle, which is run by the money that were acquired with previously in the novel. We spoke about that, how the fortune of Godalming came handy in these moments. But actually, it's a battle, because the heroes are using physical resources, the latest technology that they can acquire, the money to get there, and things happening. But on the other hand, we have this very powerful strategic guy who managed to go around them, no matter the money, no matter the advantages they had, because he is very clever guy, and he has his own powers.
And the powers are greater, because of him being on his native soil.
Yeah.
And you remember that great line, Enrique, at the beginning of the book: Transylvania is not England. Things are different here. So even though Godalming has his contacts with Lloyds of London, and he can bribe guys at the ship yards, it's different. And so advantage, as you and I say, this is the chess match. Advantage Dracula now, but there are still some physical restraints. Like, the band of heroes realize, they're going to have to get to this castle somehow, but so is the Count.
Yeah.
Bram Stoker has made it exciting, although he could have shortened the whole thing up.
Yeah.
And had the Count, when you land in Transylvania, transform into a bat and fly home.
That's it. Yeah.
But that would have been boring, right? So he attaches these physical properties, as you said, to the Count. He's got to get with the gypsies in his native soil, because he's still got to go on water to get up the river, and then on the carriage back to the castle.
So this is very interesting, because we are seeing there's nothing happening put it in posting in the novel, but in our minds we know that these things are happening right now. So this is very interesting, a chess match, as you well said, all these past 6 months.
Yep.
Ok, let me translate this. Bueno, pues aquí ya estamos viendo muy interesante, ¿no? Pues ya la persecución como tal. Y por el otro lado, vemos, así como Mina está teniendo una lucha espiritual, ¿no? Con el tema de Drácula, por el otro lado se está llevando a cabo una lucha que también es muy física. Y aquí es donde llega Lord Godalming y prueba, pues, ser muy útil, porque, bueno, finalmente Bram ya había puesto las semillas de que iba a recibir una herencia, y esa herencia aquí viene muy importante, bueno, porque con ese dinero ellos se pueden mover por Europa y tratar de llegar antes que el conde a Transilvania. Sabemos que por el otro lado el conde, pues es brillante porque una mente muy importante, entonces con sus propios recursos, con sus propios poderes, inclusive les gana, ¿no? Dándoles la vuelta y sin que se dieran cuenta de cuando él pasó en el barco, mientras que ellos ya iban en el tren. Entonces, bueno, pues como dice Dacre, esto es un juego de ajedrez y bueno, pues sigue estando de acuerdo porque bueno, Drácula sabe que ya está por llegar a Transilvania y como dice Dacre, Transilvania no es Londres, es una de las frases muy lindas del libro. Y bueno, pues aquí las cosas son totalmente diferentes. Y si bien Bram pudo haberse ido por un shortcut, ¿no? Como pues es la territorio de Drácula, entonces se podría convertir en un murciélago y en 2 segundos llegar y ganarles. Pero bueno, pues es definitivamente aquí la parte literaria muy rica, ¿no? De esta trepidante acción que bueno, pues aquí nos tiene encantados. Ok, Dacre, so
Two more things I want to say to end off this week. And one of them is coming from a writer myself. And I was thinking about this when I was reading this story yet a number of times. When Godalming has to bribe somebody to look at the box in the ship,
yeah,
wouldn't you think that possibly the guy that he bribed would think, oh, there must be something really special in that box. I'm going to go take a look at that myself. Okay?
yeah.
Instead, what Bram has done is thought of this. And he said, Godalming told the shippers that he fancied that the box sent aboard might contain something stolen from a friend of his, and I got half consent that he might open it at his own risk. So he creates a risk so that this guy would not open it up. If he did, it would be one heck of a surprise, and he would probably get destroyed by Dracula. So this, again, is Bram's attention to detail to make sure that you know everything is covered. And the final thing I want to say, many people have thought this a big mistake on behalf of Bram Stoker. When at the end of the novel we see very shortly, the ending is different than what we see right here. Because just in this section, what these guys have decided is if they do get to this crate and they open it up, if the count is there, Van Helsing and Seward shall cut off his head and drive a stake through his heart, just like they did with Lucy. So this is only a couple of chapters from the very end of the novel, and I'm not going to give you spoilers now, but just remember that in this chapter, Bram said, this is what we do to destroy this guy. Seward will cut off his head and at once and drive a stake through his heart.
Yeah, so he has a plan.
He's got a plan. So translate that. That's our ending thought. And I want the readers to then really enjoy and think of this as they go forward to the rest of the story.
Ok, bien importante, dice Dacre que, bueno, traduzcamos esta parte porque, bueno, pues es importante, ¿no? Bram Stoker definitivamente tenía un plan, ¿no? Mucha gente, ya después hablaremos al final para no dar un spoiler ahorita, pero mucha gente asume que Bram se equivocó con la parte final. Sin embargo, aquí nos deja muy claro un detalle, cuidando la atención a los detalles que siempre ha tenido Bram, ¿no? Deja dicho, ¿no? Cómo es el plan para matar al conde, ¿no? Entonces sabemos que Van Helsing tiene un plan con Seward para que suceda en el momento. Sin embargo, ¿no? Previendo eso también lo ponen en boca de Godalming y previendo que el tipo del barco se pueda enjuguecer con lo que hay allá adentro, a lo mejor quiere más. Entonces crea un warning, crea una precaución para que precisamente no abra la caja porque pudiera suceder algo terrible. Entonces, bueno, hasta aquí dice Dacre que le quiere dejar porque quiere que todo el mundo piense en esto que está pasando, ¿no? En esto que realmente hay un plan para acabar con el conde y no es algo casual, ¿no? Después ya platicaremos de eso. Ok, Dacre.
Well, that's it, man.
That's it.
Enjoy the next week of reading, and we'll see you as we get closer to Halloween. Realize this also, folks, that as many different cultures celebrate Halloween in different ways, that really, from my research, there's different ways to celebrate, but the Celtics brought a version of Halloween to Ireland, the home of my great-granduncle, 2,000-3,000 years ago, when it was the end of the summer season. The days were getting darker, the nights were getting longer, and as they said, everything these people were imagining at this time of year was all focused on the lightness and the darkness and the growing season. And as they said, this is where the time of year when the veil between the living and the dead is very thin. And so the costumes and things were coming out to scare off the bad guys, but to welcome the good guys. And this was the culture that Bram Stoker was raised up in, the culture of the spirits that were coming out and being a part of life and death. And I believe his whole concept of the dead and the undead were deeply rooted in his Celtic mysticism.
Wow.
And that, you know, when he learned about researching about vampirism and the undead, it was not that different to the stories he heard as a young boy.
Definitely.
So enjoy the Halloween season when your relatives and the souls of the undead come out. You know, say hello. It's not always, doesn't have to be all that scary unless they're the bad guys. And if they are, you better have your crucifix and your garlic ready to go.
We know how to greet the dead in Mexico.
Yes, you do.
But that's why we are very similar with Romania, because I told you before, many of our traditions are rooted in folklore, and they are very similar all over the world. So I know what you mean in greeting the dead for this special time of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, be safe. Have fun, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a nice one. Bye-bye.